Today we will start with the section History, chapter The Rise of Nationalism in Europe. Now, in this chapter, we will basically learn about rise of nationalism in the 19th century Europe. In this chapter, we will come across nation state and how nationalism changed the world mainly in the 19th century Europe, and the result was nation state, and in place of the multinational dynasties. फर्स्ट मेनली हमारे पास पेट वो मोनार्की सिस्टम चलता था, बट आफ्टर ऑल दिस इट इज़ अ नेशन स्टेट, ऑल बिकेम nation states. Basically, the political change was seen throughout the world. The rise of nationalism is very important in the history of the world. Now, in this, mainly, it is all about the painting of Frederic Sorrow, the French artist. It basically depicts unity, nationalism in Europe. Now, starting with the chapter, the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. The first clear expression of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. Now, the French Revolution बहुत important role play करता है. क्यों? Because वहीं से ही बाकी सारे पार्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड एंड यूरोप को पता चला था अबाउट नेशनलिज्म, अबाउट हाउ पीपल कैन overthrow a dynasty, overthrow a monarch. They can bring change in the world. So France, as you would remember, was a full-fledged territorial state in 1789 under the rule of absolute monarch. The political and constitutional changes that came in the wake of the French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. अब जितने भी political और constitutional change हुए थे वो French Revolution में, that led to the end of monarchy and to a government of body of some French citizens. The revolution proclaimed that it was the people who would henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny. So अब सबको पता था that people can constitute a nation and take part in something bigger. From the very beginning, the French revolutionaries introduced various measures and practices that would create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people. अब जितने भी फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशनरीज थे वो ऐसे मेजर्स और प्रैक्टिसेस वो कर रहे थे स्टार्ट जिससे एक कलेक्टिव आइडेंटिटी, एक द यूनिटी वाली फीलिंग आए अमंगस्ट द फ्रेंच पीपल. द आइडियाज़ ऑफ ला पार्टर Le Citoyen emphasized the notion of a united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. The fatherland and the citizen, ये सब एक notions बन गए थे, आइडियाज़ थे जो एक यूनाइटेड कम्युनिटी को वो करे, enjoy करे with equal rights under a constitution. A new French flag, the tricolor, was chosen to replace the former royal standard. एक नया फ्रेंच फ्लैग बनाया गया था to replace the former royal standard. The Estates General was elected by the body of active citizens and renamed National Assembly. New hymns were composed, oaths taken, martyrs commemorated, all in the name of nation. A centralized administrative system was put in place and it formulated uniform laws for all citizens within its territory. Internal customs duties and dues were abolished, and a new uniform system of weights and measures were adopted. Regional dialects were discouraged, and French, as it was spoken and written in Paris, became the common language of the nation. Now जितने भी रीजनल डायलेक्ट्स थे उनको डिस्करेज करा गया. फ्रेंच as it was spoken and written in Paris became the language of the nation. फ्रेंच फिर national language बन गई. The revolutionaries further declared that it was the mission and the destiny of the French nation to liberate the peoples of Europe from despotism. In other words, to help other peoples of Europe to become nations. Now, जितने भी फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशनरीज थे इन द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, उन लोग ने सोचा कि जितने भी और यूरोप के पार्ट्स हैं विच आर सब्जेक्ट टू ऑल दिस मोनार्की एंड ऑल दिस, उनको भी हेल्प करा जाए कि वो एक इंडिपेंडेंट नेशन बने. When the news of the events in France reached the different cities of Europe, students and other members of educated middle class began setting up Jacobin clubs. Their activities and campaigns prepared the way for the French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and much of Italy in the 1790s. With the outbreak of revolutionary wars, the French army began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad. अब न्यूज़ ऑफ इवेंट्स जो भी थी वो डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ सिटीज़ एंड डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ यूरोप पहुंची. जितने भी मेनली मिडिल क्लास थे वो छोटे छोटे सोशल क्लब्स, जैकोबिन क्लब्स बनाने लग गए जिसमें वो ये आइडिया स्प्रेड करते थे. जितने भी उनकी एक्टिविटीज़ और कैंपेन्स थे वर prepared the way for the French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and much of the Italy in 1790s. फ्रेंच ने अपनी आर्मी भी बनाई थी खुद की. So with the outbreak of the revolutionary wars, the French armies began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad. अब सारा आइडिया वो बाहर रीच आउट करने लग गए. Now coming to the next paragraph. Within the wide swathe of territory that came under his control, Napoleon set about introducing many other reforms that he had already introduced in France. Through a return to monarchy, Napoleon had no doubt destroyed democracy in France, but in the administrative field, he had incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make the whole system more rational and efficient. Napoleon ने, though it destroyed a little democracy in France, बट उसने बहुत सारे रेवोल्यूशनरी प्रिंसिपल्स वो करे थे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव फील्ड में जो बहुत ज़्यादा रैशनल एफिशिएंट थे. द सिविल कोड ऑफ 1804, यूजुअली नोन एज द नेपोलियन कोड, did away with all the privileges on birth, established equality before the law and secured the right to property. उसने privileges based on birth, जैसे राजा का बेटा राजा वाला, उसने वो अबॉलिश करे थे. इक्वालिटी का सेंस, दैट ऑल आर इक्वल इन द आइज ऑफ लॉ, उसने वो इस्टेब्लिश करा था. एंड सिक्योर द राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी भी सिक्योर करा था. This code was exported to the regions under French control in the Dutch Republic, in Switzerland, in Italy and Germany. Napoleon simplified administrative divisions, abolished the feudal system and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. In the towns too, guild restrictions were removed. Transport and communication systems were improved. Peasants, artisans, workers and new businessmen enjoyed a newfound freedom. Now, what is the meaning of serfdom and manorial dues? Now, serfdom is mainly feudal labor. Feed peasants from feudal laborers. And manorial dues. Manorial dues are the meaning of manorial is feudal lordship, जिसमें एक certain fees set होती है, certain privileges set होते हैं. जो जितने भी manorial dues थे उसने उनको जो भी एक फीस होती है उसने वो फ्री कर दिया था peasants को देने से. In the towns too, guild restrictions were removed and transport and communication systems were improved. And जितने भी मेनली कॉमनर्स थे उन्होंने एक न्यू फाउंड फ्रीडम को देखा, उसको एंजॉय करा. नाउ बिजनेसमैन एंड स्मॉल स्केल प्रोड्यूसर्स ऑफ गुड्स इन पर्टिकुलर बिगैन टू रियलाइज दैट यूनिफॉर्म लॉज, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency would facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another. अब after the French Revolution सबको समझ में आया दैट यूनिटी इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड फॉर बिजनेस, फॉर एक्सचेंज ऑफ गुड्स. और एक एक रूल बेसिकली दे अंडरस्टूड कि एक रूल, एक कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट चाहिए होगा सबको टू फैसिलिटेट द मूवमेंट, टू फैसिलिटेट द ग्रोथ ऑफ द नेशन. सो उन लोग ने रियलाइज़ करा कि एक स्टैंडर्डाइज वेट्स एंड मेजर्स हों जिससे सामान ख़रीदा जाए और लिया जाए. एक पर्टिकुलर एक करेंसी हो उनकी नेशन की, उनकी कंट्री की, एंड सम लॉज ऑन विच द कंट्री वर्क्स. However, in the areas conquered, the reactions of the local populations to French rule were mixed. Initially, in many places such as Holland and Switzerland, as well as in certain cities like Brussels, Mainz, Milan, Warsaw, and the French armies were welcomed as harbingers of liberty. But the initial enthusiasm soon turned to hostility as it became clear that the new administrative arrangements did not go hand in hand with political freedom. Increased taxation and censorship, forced conscription to the French armies required to conquer the rest of the Europe, all seemed to outweigh the advantages of the administrative changes. Now the French army marched into all these cities and countries, but पहले तो they were welcomed with open arms, but they also soon realized, उन्होंने भी realize करा कि द एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव चेंजेस ये सब तो एक तरफ है, बट द पॉलिटिकल चेंजेस, बट द पॉलिटिकल फ्रीडम उनको चाहिए वो उनके पास नहीं है. सो द इंथुजियाज्म, जैसे उन लोगों ने उनको वेलकम करा था वो लोग समझ गए कि वो लोग भी एक हॉस्टिल सिचुएशन में हैं. नाउ कमिंग टू द मेकिंग ऑफ नेशनलिज्म इन यूरोप. If you took the map of mid-18th century Europe, you will find that there were no nation-states as we know them today. What we know today as Germany, Italy, Switzerland were divided into kingdoms, duchies, cantons, whose rulers had their autonomous territories. Eastern and Central Europe were under autocratic monarchies within the territories of which lived diverse people. Now coming back to where we were. They did not see themselves, Eastern and Central Europe were under autocratic monarchies within the territories of which lived diverse people. Now, they did not see themselves as sharing collective identity or a common culture. Often, they spoke different languages and belonged to different ethnic groups. Now, before the 19th century or during the 19th century, many countries were there which even did not speak with same language. They spoke different languages, belonged to different cultures, different ethnic groups. Now, many empires were the Habsburg Empire that ruled over Austria-Hungary, for example, was a patchwork of many different regions and peoples. It included the Alpine regions, the Tyrol, Austria, and the Sudetenland, as well as Bohemia, where the aristocracy was predominantly German speaking. Now, aristocracy का मतलब होता है that it is a form of government जहाँ जो वो रूल करती है जो highest class in a certain society होती है, वो ही रूल करती है. तो that is the meaning of aristocracy. It is also included that the Italian speaking provinces of Lombardy and Venetia. In Hungary, half of the population spoke Magyar, while the other half spoke variety of dialects. मतलब किसी भी एक कंट्री में एक यूनाइटेड लैंग्वेज नहीं थी. In Galicia, the aristocracy spoke Polish. Besides the three dominant groups, they also lived within the boundaries of the empire. A mass of subject peasant peoples, Bohemians and Slovaks to the north, Slovens to the in Carniola, Croats to the south, Romans to the east in Transylvania. Such differences did not easily promote a sense of political unity. The only tie binding these diverse groups together was a common allegiance to the emperor. अब the main point is, अगर उनको एम्पायर रूल ख़त्म करना था और नेशनल एक नेशन बिल्डअप करना था, बट उनकी सबकी लैंग्वेजेस अलग थी एंड द ओनली थ्रेड दैट दे वर टुगेदर वर द एलिजेंस टू द एम्परर. नाउ हाउ डिड नेशनलिज्म एंड द आइडिया ऑफ नेशन स्टेट इमर्ज. अब हम लोग आते हैं द एरिस्टोक्रेसी एंड द न्यू मिडिल क्लास. एरिस्टोक्रेसी का मैंने मतलब बता दिया, दैट द गवर्नमेंट is in a form in which the power is held by the most highest class in certain societies. उनको उस form of government को बोलते हैं aristocracy. And socially and politically, a landed aristocracy was the dominant class on the continent. The members of this class were united by a common way of life. मतलब they were already the upper class, so उनका एक way of life भी अलग ही था. They had houses on the countryside and also out towns. वो सिर्फ फ्रेंच तभी बोलते थे for diplomacy in high society, and their families were often connected by ties of marriage. But वो काफ़ी small number में थे, वो कुछ ज़्यादा नहीं थे. The majority तो वो peasants ही थी. To the west, the bulk of the land was farmed by tenants and small owners, while in Eastern and Central Europe, the pattern of land holding was characterized by vast estates which were cultivated by serfs. Now, इसमें बोलते हैं, अब now imagine West Europe, Central Europe and Eastern Europe. Now, Eastern Europe एंड मेन सेंट्रल यूरोप में लैंड होल्डिंग का कल्चर चलता था, एंड जो लैंड कल्टिवेट होता था वो मेनली सर्व्स करते थे. सर्व्स कौन होते हैं? फ्यूडल लेबरर्स. ठीक है. एंड ऑन अ पार्ट ऑफ एंड द वेस्ट यूरोप एंड अ पार्ट ऑफ द सेंट्रल यूरोप किस में डेवलप था? ग्रोथ ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्शन एंड ट्रेड. ठीक है. एक इमेजिन करो पिक्चर विद वेस्टर्न यूरोप into industrialization and Eastern Europe into land holding and cultivation by serfs. Now, To the west, the bulk of the land was farmed by tenants and small owners, while in Eastern and Central Europe, the pattern of land holding was characterized by vast estates which were cultivated by serfs. In western parts of Central Europe, the growth of industrial production and trade meant the growth of towns and the emergence of commercial class whose existence was based on production of the market. अब आपने बताया कि वेस्टर्न और सेंट्रल पार्ट ऑफ सेंट्रल यूरोप में इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन ज़्यादा हो रहा था, मतलब ग्रोथ ऑफ टाउन्स एंड द इमर्जेंस ऑफ कमर्शियल क्लास। अब जब इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन ज़्यादा होगा तो कमर्शियल क्लास तो उभर कर आएगी ही आएगी। जितने भी लोग इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन होंगे वहाँ पे एक मिडिल क्लास इमर्ज करके आएगी ही आएगी, जो थोड़े से और टूवर्ड्स इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन टूवर्ड्स दिस हो, ठीक है। Now, industrialization began in England in the second half of the 18th century. इंग्लैंड में इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन सेकेंड हाफ ऑफ द 18th century से स्टार्ट हो गया था, बट ऑन अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड लाइक इन फ्रांस एंड जर्मनी इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन स्टार्ट हुआ था 19th century से। Now, in its wake, new social groups came into being. A working class population and middle classes made up industrialization, businessmen, professionals. In Central and Eastern Europe, these groups were smaller in number till the 19th century. Why they were small in number in the Eastern and Central Europe? बिकॉज वहाँ पे तो ज़्यादा लैंड होल्डिंग और इन सब का काम होता था, बट इन दी वेस्टर्न यूरोप इट वॉज मेनली इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, तो वर्किंग क्लास उभर के वहाँ पर आई थी। इट वॉज अमंग द एजुकेटेड लिबरल मिडिल क्लासेस दैट द आइडियाज़ ऑफ नेशनल यूनिटी फॉलोइंग द अबॉलिशन ऑफ एरिस्टोक्रेसी प्रिविलेज गेंड पॉपुलैरिटी। अब जितने भी एजुकेटेड और लिबरल माइंड्स हैं उन्हीं को तो ये बात समझ में आएगी, what is nationalism, what is the importance of abolition of aristocracy. Now we will do the other part in the next class. I will give you the worksheet for the same, so go through it very thoroughly.